To some questions, and we have Chloe asking the question, how are you measuring the positive impact of your design, materials, ink choices before and after? Reduction in carbon footprint, are you sharing those with consumers through the connected experience, so through the QR code?
Yes, you can give them the information related to this. You can teach the consumer. You can tell them what are the benefits for this. So we are having here a reason why we are doing this, and they will understand this, and they will be more close to the brand, and they will interact more in this part and make the good choices in this.
Definitely. Sabine asks, can the QR code help with the recycling stream? Could it have information that will help people to understand where to put the package after it has been used, for example?
Yes, this is what we will be focusing on. We should teach the consumer because because when we say sustainability, sometimes most of the people are afraid and are scared, and they will say, "Oh, how we will do this? It's hard." So most, and even food companies, even everybody, they love to do this, but they will find it hard to be sustainable. Sometimes they feel that they do not have too much opportunity to make it will affect the design, it will affect the supply chain, it will affect everything. But here, if we start by teaching the consumer and teaching all the stakeholder about sustainability and showing them through the connected packaging, through the QR code, that we can teach them how this is done, and it will be easy for them. When you know something, it will not be difficult anymore.
Yes, most
Not be hard
definitely.
anymore. So yeah, it's good to give them this knowledge and the options that they can do to be more sustainable.
Definitely. I think this talks about, I mean, I don't want to say sustainability is a trend because I think it's much more than a trend, but there are a lot of emerging trends, and I think maybe perhaps brands paying attention to sustainability, you could say, is a change. But what about some of the emerging trends that you're seeing in packaging design?
One of the most exciting trends right now is intelligent packaging.
Okay.
Beyond just looking good, packaging is becoming more interactive now and consumer-centric. For example, imagine augmented reality that lets consumer experience the brand in a whole new way, or scannable codes that offer personalized content. Another trend is modular packaging that reduces waste by allowing consumer to reuse or repurpose components. Brands that embrace this innovation, for me, these brands are not just meeting the demand for sustainability, they are also creating a more engaging, future-forward consumer experience, and this is the most important point now.
Definitely. I think so much is changing, and I think there's legislation that's moving into that, but also marketing. There's so many different things that are kind of helping brands to really think about their packaging as a media channel rather than just something to protect the food, which is really interesting. As a creative leader, what advice would you give as we're coming to the end? So what about advice? What would you give to designers and brands who are aiming to try and be more inclusive and think about innovating with inclusivity in mind for their packaging?
Look, Jenny, my advice would be to start by listening to your consumer. This is the most important part. Understand their needs, pain points, and aspirations. Inclusive design is not a one-size-fits-all approach. It requires empathy, research, and iteration. Also, I will advise them to not be afraid, to experiment these new technologies like smart or connected packaging to create deeper personalized connection. They can open up a new way to engage and include more people.
Definitely. And that's what it's all about. The more people that you can include, the easier you can make it, the better the brand is going to be for more people.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much. It's been great chatting with you, and the audience has been super interactive. So that is fantastic conversation I think that we've had. So lots of really great stuff there. So thank you so much for your time. I now welcome Katie Roselaar to our virtual stage. Welcome, Katie.
Hi, Jen.
You are a highly regarded packaging development professional. You have extensive experience in taking projects from concept all the way through to product launch. You are at ThePackHub leading the technical services team, which is dedicated to delivering innovative packaging solutions, conducting sustainability audits, and helping clients address packaging challenges, whether they be big or small. So, Katie, it's fantastic to have you here with us today. That's quite an intro, but tell us a little bit on the informal side. Tell us something that maybe not a lot of people know so much about you.
Well, I wasn't sure here if you wanted a sort of work-based example or a personal-based example, so I've got you one of each.
All
So,
right.
and I've been looking around for a sample in my office. I can't find. Do you remember the Coke can with everybody's names printed
Yes.
individually on the Coke can? So I was working at Crown at the time, one of the pioneers who brought that technology to market. So there you go, is a little work fact that
Ah.
is quite fun. A personal fact is that I'm a grade 8 violinist, so I'm looking for keyboard lessons for my daughter at the moment. So I guess that's why that's in my mind and topical. So there you go, one of each.
Very good. Grade 7 flautist. So maybe we could get together
Oh,
and
do a duet.
do some
There we
jamming. All right, let's just jump in. So we talked obviously before this session, and it's very much that apparent that there is limited data on inclusivity in packaging. What patterns or trends are you observing in brands that are successful in inclusive packaging solutions?
Yeah, sure. No, it's a really good question. If I ask you to just go to the first slide, I've got a few interesting points to share. So you talk about data, and actually our main product at the Pack Hub is the Innovation Zone. So the Innovation Zone is that place where we can track all of the launched packaging innovations, and we add 30 new packaging innovations to our database each week. Okay.
Wow.
So, as well as being up to date with the latest trends, it means that we can go back historically and have a little look at what's happened and search different terms. So, with this chart, I've used our database, which at this time, when I searched it, had almost 9,000 entries. And I've put a few search terms in. So, sustainability, of course, all of the entries, or well, just over half. A lot of the entries mention sustainability, so that's exactly what we'd expect. And I wouldn't really expect inclusive design to be at that level. But when I start to put different search terms in to give you an idea, so premiumization, shelf standout, okay, that does become a lot lower. But when I put in the word inclusive, you can see there I've got 28 search terms returned. Easy open gives me a few more, 668. So 7.5% of them are mentioning that. Ease of use gives me a few more. But I just think as an industry, I think we should be talking more about the successes that we've had in inclusive design in order to encourage others, because I just don't think this topic is on people's radars enough. And I think looking at this now, what technology can bring to the topic is really interesting. So all of a sudden, you're not necessarily asking people to change their manufacturing lines too much. They might be adding some technology, but you're not having to ask them to make operational changes in order to implement solutions. So I just wanted to put this chart up to make
Yeah.
that point, to
Yeah.
say we don't see a huge amount of launches in this space.
Yeah, and do you think that's because maybe it's easier to focus on color, fun, rather than maybe it's kind of not so exciting to talk about easy to open, for example?
Yeah, and I think to an extent, I mean, how many real sort of pioneers are there in the industry, and how many are following?
Mm.
And if we look at brand marketeers who might be sort of starting off these projects and leading these initiatives, how many of those people really have inclusive design on their radar? I
Mm.
don't think many do. So the companies that we see lead the way have people within the organization who are tasked with leading inclusive design efforts, who really understand what's needed from a design perspective to create a pack that's much more inclusively designed. Um, And yeah, whose radar it's on every day, because I don't think that the marketeers that are sort of steering the ship trying to make their mark in the next 12 months have it on their radar. And I don't think they see other brands doing it either, to
Yeah,
take inspiration from, to copy, to repeat.
yeah.
So
And maybe there's a bit of a lack of tracking maybe as well. So could there be a lack of that? I don't know. I mean, how can brands better track and measure the impact of their inclusive packaging initiatives? I mean, are there some specific metrics or approaches that you would recommend?
I mean, I think for the technology ones, that's much easier. And you touched on that a little bit earlier. I think there are metrics that you can use to sort of track engagement, for example, with those codes, for example, and that's really nice. You can check sort of repeat engagement and interaction, and what time of day people are using those interactions and things, and how that's building over time. So I think for anything that's sort of technologically enabled, that's easier to track. I think we need to make the distinction here as well, that some of the inclusive design is perhaps more physical in its nature. It might be that people have reduced strength as they're aging, for example, or reduced strength because of some difference in their characteristics. So that is less easy to track, and that would be more the traditional sort of testing mechanics, or rate of sale potentially. But then something like rate of sale, it's harder to sort of dissect what is due to this part of the equation, what's due to a promotion, what's due to the inclusive design, what's due to different bits. But I think you can start to get a feel for it.
No, I think that's definitely a difficult part. You know, what if you do a change? Well, how do we know it's not about the new color as well, and you know, whatever that might be. But if we go to the comments from the audience as well, I think Lucy makes a really good point here, because she says, unfortunately, perhaps also there is a lack of legal imperative to drive this, and sustainability is definitely coming into so many different legislations, so many different laws, extended producer responsibility, etc. But there doesn't seem to be much around inclusive design.
No, thanks, Lucy. I'd really agree. It's a really good point. And I think this might be the Lucy that I'm working with at the moment. We're actually trying to put a bit of a thought leadership piece together, so that we can share, hopefully ultimately it might drive sort of legislation, but at least in the short term it'll raise awareness. So we want to put a piece together to raise awareness of what tools and techniques are out there that people can use, and access, and what resources are available to designers and marketeers to help them understand the topic, and create better solutions in the future.
Yeah, Lucy says it is her. Hi.
It's a good point, Lucy. Thank you.
That's good. So what about the key barriers then, preventing the wider adoption? So is it really integrating connected packaging that is the way forward? What are the challenges?
I think that it is just a big challenge that it's not on people's radars. It is a big challenge that we don't have any legislation or anything else driving it. And it's exactly why I want to be involved in talks like this, so that we can raise the profile of it. After that, yes, cost and understanding is a bit of a barrier. I've got some examples to share later, and I know that the structural examples that I've got there cost a little bit more than others, but I would hope that you could make that back in terms of sales. And obviously the connected solutions, there is a cost behind building it, but not a huge on cost on a product level when that infrastructure is built. Changing a print doesn't add a huge amount to packaging, especially if you don't need to add another color or anything like that. So I think really companies just need to see inclusive design and inclusively designed packaging as an investment, not so much as a cost.
Definitely. Let's look at some examples. Have you got any examples of innovations that have been successfully addressing this accessibility challenge?
So this first one, this is from Eviosis. It looks like a typical jam jar lid, doesn't it? And it is a jam jar lid, but it's not so typical. So this is the only example I've got here of a structural design innovation. This jam jar lid is much easier to open than your traditional metal vacuum closure. It's because it's in two parts. So you've got an outer rim that's opening separately to that top panel that has the vacuum on it. So when you turn that outer rim, that then cams that panel upwards vertically and lifts it off. So this is a really nice example to help less physically able consumers open what is a real problem piece of packaging, and that's a jam jar. We get a lot of complaints and people having difficulties with jam jar lids, for example. So
yeah, makes sense. Okay.
And then if we move to the next slide, so we've got a sort of a slide on each innovation here. So this one's from Mattel, and this is actually inclusive packaging. So both the product itself is a blind Barbie doll, and the packaging that this is packaged in is easier to open. So it's been designed in association with the American Foundation for the Blind. It's got enhanced usability and is easier for children with visual impairments. So sort of on multiple different levels, it's quite a nice example of packaging. So this is
yeah, really nice.
The next examples I've got are a few different examples of sort of codes and technological advancements and interactions. So this example is s.a.r.l's accessible QR code. So they're working with several brands, actually. There's one pictured here, but they're also working with Diageo, Kit Kat, Nestle, and the Quality Street brands. There's a lot of those Nestle brands. And this is an accessible QR code, so it's easier to access for those with visual impairments, but a QR code type approach.
Fantastic.
This one's a Unilever example, and Unilever are one of those companies that I mentioned that do have a sort of head of inclusive design within their company. So I think that's a really good starting point. The Alia app, I'm not sure if you've seen it, but or the audience have seen it. You've probably seen it, Jenny, but allows the user to scan a barcode and then from the barcode get an audio guide to the packaging. That audio guide then can tell more about the ingredients, the usage instructions of the packaging, and different sort of aspects of the packaging. So I think that's quite nice because it's something that's already there. It's already a unique identifier on that package, and then you're getting the audio sort of alongside it and with it. As we talk through these examples, I think it's interesting for the audience to think about the examples all sort of can offer different things depending on the technology used. And I know you talk about that a lot in your book as well, you know, sort of we haven't got an NFC or an RFID example here, but how those sorts of technologies would differ from the sort of QR and on pack. So obviously if you're using a barcode, you need to be in close proximity to the barcode with your phone. The barcode might be on the back of pack or might be underneath the pack. So that's worth sort of bearing in mind. But the information that Unilever are providing off the back of scanning this barcode is that information that you're going to want when you're up close to it. So what are the ingredients in the pack? How do I prepare it? How long do I cook it for, etc. So
Definitely.
Yes, Alia.
Definitely. And I think there's some really interesting things around ability to be able just to support that experience. So, you know, the Barbie, of course, is great because the Barbie itself is actually looking at inclusivity in its first instance, but then also to work with actually the blind association to be able to understand, well, actually, how would this be better? It's really interesting as well, because it's not just about what we think, is actually finding out. Unless you are part of that group, then actually you don't know.
You know, I think that's a really good idea. I was actually that first design we showed, the easy open closure, I was actually part of the team that developed that at Crown, and we used the University of the Third Age. We actually developed that with local old people's homes to go in and see what sort of movement and accessibility, strength and things that people had. We had universities involved with that so that they could again measure and advise and track. So yes, I think that collaboration is really interesting. And we looked at, I can't remember, charity endorsement essentially. So I think these organisations do have streams very much where they'll work with commercial organisations. So yeah, I think it's a really good point you make.
And I think it kind of goes back to one of the audience's comments, which was about the AI tool. I can see how an AI tool could work well for, color and readability, but I think in terms of like actually being able to open something or, being able to overcome that, I think you have to kind of have a physical display, if that makes sense, of actually doing that, unless you have somebody on your team, because I can't see how AI is going to be able to know how you open a jam jar. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe in the future, but I think now it wouldn't.
AI is such a big area, isn't it? It's such a big area. I don't know. Could there be something that's enabling videoing people opening? I mean, that's a wonderful. We work with Alistair Vince at Watch Me Think. It's a lovely, lovely agency, lovely consultancy, and doing sort of ethnographic kind of research and actually getting into people's homes and actually seeing what they do. Could AI, obviously with consent, enable something that way so that you can get rich data, seeing people, seeing their interactions, seeing what they're grabbing for in their kitchen, seeing the insides of their cupboards and where these products sit compared to others and how they choose what they're going to have and so on. I guess, yeah, there could be ways that AI could help, but it's easier with the digital side. I agree. It's more obvious with the digital side. Could be
Yeah,
more
definitely. I think Chloe makes a point here that you could include a customer feedback form within the connected experience to measure the success of the design, of course, and get some feedback and offer to exchange the feedback for some sort of prize or discount voucher or something like that. I think that makes good sense as well, to be able to understand, how successful it is. Anonymous, we never know if it's the same anonymous. Anonymous attendees is also asking a question though. How do you best make the pivot from inclusive design being an accommodation or as a compliance into the larger opportunity of it's better, so that it becomes a business differentiator and growth opportunity? Easy open works for everyone, not just oldsters with us riders. That's true also.
Yeah. I think there's a sensitivity with how you portray these options so that they're not patronizing.
Yeah.
And I think that's just part of the brand as well. And I think Joumana sort of talked about it earlier as well. I think just presenting something, a good piece of design that works well for everybody, will then include those with the physical lack of or less strength or whatever, the arthritis, whatever it may be. So positioning something so it works well for everybody will please the majority as well as the people on the fringes of that ability, maybe, let's say.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a really good point as well. This brand has this for this type of people. Well, maybe I don't want to be classed as that type of person, like what does that mean?
Even if we are less strong, we don't want to be reminded that we're less strong, do we?
Right, exactly. That now I can't read the ingredients on some things until I hold it like that. I don't need you to tell me that.
Exactly.
Absolutely. All right, let's dive through. You've got a couple more examples, I think.
Oh yeah, okay, cool. Thanks. So yeah, we've just done this one, haven't we? So the next one. Cool, thanks. So this is one that Nestle are doing. So this is putting the NaviLens technology. So the NaviLens, I talked about these different technologies working in different ways. This one's working actually from 3 meters away. So it's using an identifier, a sort of hidden code, if you will, on the front of the pack. So this one's more, if you're walking through store, you can actually use NaviLens to guide and draw you into a particular product and give you more information about a product at that point. So it has a further reach rather than being in absolute proximity. Of course, then when you are in real proximity, so if you are using it at home and you need more guidance on the usage instruction of it or the nutritional guidelines of it or anything else, the recycling information of the pack, then you can get that way as well. And bear in mind that this is infant formula, right? Infant nutrition. It's so critical. Infants will be malnourished if this product is not administered correctly. So to make this as a design piece so easy to use, again, it comes back to sort of different levels of sort of cognition and understanding and literacy and other things as well. So to make this as easy as possible for people means that babies will be healthier.
Yeah.
So really big, important stuff that this technology is supporting.
Yeah, Navilens is great. It's like a version of a QR code, so it's a coloured type QR code, which is out there, which means that you don't also have to line it up specifically. You know, with a QR, when you're doing the kind of scan, you have to line it up specifically. Actually, with the Navilens code, it can grab it even if you're not quite on there, which of course is really good if you have visual impairment, because it's going to be even harder for you to get it perfectly aligned. So it's a great technology, that one.
Yeah. And then I think we've got one or two more in the deck. So this one's pairing beauty packaging with audio guides. So again, in terms of the usage of these particular products, just so that you've got that audio version of the interaction as well. So this is using QR codes for those audio instructions. So more of a traditional route to delivering that inclusive design.
Nice.
Yeah, I think that's the last one. Is it? Have we got another one after that?
No.
I think that's the last one.
That's the last one. That's the last one.
In terms of the
What
slides.
about looking ahead? What do you think about the relationship between inclusivity or inclusive design and connected packaging? How do you see that kind of forming, or any other technologies, of course?
Yeah, I think we're just scratching the surface. I think, as I sort of alluded to earlier, we can have more interactive, more tailored experiences. So NFC tags, augmented reality, more personalized information. I think that's ensuring that these experiences are suitable for all, not just the sort of super tech savvy people. So making it really easy through a particular app. Yeah.
No, definitely. I think there's that we don't know what's coming, but I think AI, as we talked about as well, is a big thing, and maybe there's some AI that's going to work its way into inclusive design, and perhaps supporting the design itself or the testing, as we saw. What about sustainability? You know, we've said that there's a growing focus. I didn't want to call it a trend. I got called out. It definitely is supported by law. So there's a lot of focus, we can say, on that. How can brands balance inclusive design and eco-friendly?
Yeah, for me, I see the sustainability, or the eco-friendly, as you're calling it, a lot of it's driven by legislation, and it's about the sort of substrates that you're using and the way that you're putting those substrates together. So if you've got sort of printed codes and printed technologies, I see that the two can exist completely side by side. As long as you've got a packaging material that you can print on, you can print those codes. I know some of them are sort of unique and some are not. I guess if we look to something where you're adding a little bit more to the packaging, like RFID or NFC, rather than just printed code, you've got more of a consideration there in terms of how you separate it out. So I think for the future, designers will need to consider that coming out in the recycling stream and be able to be sort of siphoned off. I think that'll be even more challenging if we look to sort of refillable and reusable packaging. So if we've got, that's particularly an area where we want to track the use of. I'm sort of going into a different topic there slightly, so forgive me, but we see a lot of technologies there where you might have an RFID tag built into the package, so that either you can know what you're going to be filling into it next, or you can send it through a particular reuse route, a particular washing route, a particular product that might go into it next, etc. I think at the point that reusable, refillable pack comes to be recycled, that might be harder to pull apart and separate. But I think it's these kind of points that brands need to be considering when they think of sustainability and inclusively designed solutions. So those technology-led ones, probably fine. The easy open or more physical ones, think about design for recycling.
Yeah, definitely. So there's some good things there, but what about stakeholder engagement? How important is that when we're looking at, you know, packaging initiatives for inclusivity? How do you navigate influence, or how will the people on this call, you know, navigate that? Because there are different stakeholders that you need to influence at different levels, depending on the company or brand that you're at.
So for us, if we're working with a particular person, company on a project, we're often working with a particular contact who is then navigating the different levels internally. So yes, that's important. That's not always something that we're so intrinsically involved in our current position. I think the more interesting way to answer this question with our position within the industry is actually thinking about stakeholders not just within one company, which should be the easier bit of the jigsaw and isn't always easy. Thinking about those stakeholders across an industry, those people who are going to be pulling together. So again, with the refill and reuse example, we're working at the moment to bring together retailers, brand owners, other partners, so logistics partners, recycling partners, washing partners. And that's even more challenging. And I think Lucy raised the point there about the legislation as well. That really involves people pulling together as an industry. And I think that's even more challenging. But the first thing, of course, like anything, is the awareness that needs to happen for us not to just operate in silos. So we haven't talked about standards actually so much through the call. I know GS1 do a lot obviously on the standards in this space, but to ensure that we're working to standardize packaging sort of rules and so on. But then yes, that we're pulling together as an industry, that we're making these experiences as similar, I guess, for consumers as possible when they're looking at different brands and different interactions. Yeah, a bit of a long answer there to your question, but does that answer it properly, thinking about different stakeholders?
I think so, but there are huge numbers of different stakeholders, especially when you start talking about, do we want to also have different printing to do the QR codes? Are we going to have some sort of reporting? So then we're talking about printing, we're talking about packaging design, we're talking about the brand. So I think there's big challenges both within a business, as you say, but kind of all the stakeholders that all bring together to actually create this finalized new packaging design.
Yeah, I think you're right.
What would be your leaving words for any brands or people who at the moment who are on this call who want to create something or bring up the topic or look into creating something which is more inclusive? What would be your kind of advice?
Yeah. So the first thing is, it's great that you're here today and you're on this call and you're thinking about this topic. So because the worst thing is when you don't know what you don't know, right? So thank you, anyone who's asking that question, that you're here today and you're listening to this. I think the first step would be really to educate yourself in the topic, have a look at the resources that are available, and Lucy and I, some others, are going to be putting out a piece on that in the future. But have a look at the Royal National Institute of the Blind, have a look at the University of the Third Age, have a look at these different sort of groups that might have resources that they can share. Understand those consumers, get into consumers' home then. So when you see that this is an issue, do some ethnography work, get into the consumer's home, see how consumers are interacting with your product and using it and what they're doing and what they're not doing. And can you design for that? Can you then put that back into your design process? Sort of be curious, understand what others are doing within the industry. Like the examples that we've shown here today, make sure you're up to speed with what others are doing and steal the good stuff and learn from the bad stuff, so I think there's a range of different things that people can do, but firstly, to be talking about the issue is what we really want, to be talking about the topic, for it to be front of mind in discussions. Can you do things immediately, even following this event? Can you look at the project brief templates that you might have within your organization, for example? Can you just add a little note in there? Look at the checklists that you might have as you go to each stage gate. Can you add some prompts in those to say, have we considered this as a point? Even sort of really simple things like that you can just go away and do now will raise the profile. And if you'd like help from experts and those that have walked this path before, then ask and inquire and, as I say, be curious. So
Yeah.
I think that's what I'd leave people with.
I think that's a really good point. Even, including that, I see a lot of change now in terms of bringing sustainability into that kind of briefing, but I haven't really seen inclusivity there. And that is a really small change, right? So ask the question, have we thought about this?
Literally, as you're pulling a brief together, your agency brief, your design brief, your internal brief, whatever it is, just having that prompt on there so that it's discussed. I think I work with brands with sort of other hats on in terms of packaging and brands. I obviously field all of the inquiries that we get for our technical services team. I do not hear the words inclusive design mentioned much. I do not get many inquiries for that type of project. So that's why we do talks like this. And yeah, I just I think that's the first thing I'd say, to make sure that it's on your radar and you're talking about it.
Yeah. Well, that's brilliant. Thank you so much, Katie. I really enjoyed all of the different case studies. I think that's really given a wide range of different examples as well, which I think is important as well. Inclusive design just doesn't mean one thing. It actually can affect so many different people, especially if you talk about, not being able to open something, as somebody mentioned in the comments as well. That could affect anyone, even not just old people, should we say. So
And no, sorry, I was just going to add, actually, just maybe the other point to that as well is that if people can't open things, they then look to open it in the wrong way. So that's when you see someone stabbing a knife into the top of the jam jar lid. That's when you see people cutting themselves on the cheese packaging. And there's some stats around that as well, on how people might injure themselves. It's awful when they might be opening packaging. So let's get this right,
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Next, we want the case studies of injuries.
No.
Brilliant. Well, big thank you to you. Big thank you to the audience, of course. Big thank you to Joumana as well. Fantastic insights from both our lovely ladies and panelists. I think it has been really interesting just to dive into some insights, into some examples around inclusive design and connected packaging, and how those two things can actually work hand in hand. I'm super excited to be able to share all of these slides with anyone who's interested. So please do reach out. There's some nice comments coming in saying thank you, great insights, power tools and packaging, what could go wrong? Yes, I can see that. It's been a fantastic audience. As I say, this is a recording, so this has been recorded, so we can send that out afterwards as well. And do keep your eyes out for the Connected Packaging Survey. So that will be released at the end of November, beginning of December. So if you can get involved with that, that would be fantastic. And then we will have the Packaging Survey reveal, which will be the results reveal in February next year. So lots of things going on. Again, big thank you to Katie. Big thank you to Joumana. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day.
Thanks, Jenny. Really
Thank
enjoyable.
you.
Thanks, Joumana.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.